Have you ever felt the tension in a room change the moment you walk in? Not because of what's said, but because of what's left unsaid. The sharp glance that lingers too long, the silence that cuts deeper than any insult, or the faint smile that hides a storm of resentment. Hatred isn't always loud or obvious. In fact, the most dangerous kind is the one hidden behind polite words and forced laughter, where people pretend to wish you well, but secretly hope for your downfall. You notice it in the sudden pauses when you approach, the subtle mockery, disguised as humor, or the way someone's energy shifts when you succeed. So what do you do when someone hates you quietly, without ever admitting it? Do you confront them? Do you pretend not to notice? Or is there a smarter, stronger way to handle it? Stoic philosophy teaches that the greatest power comes not from revenge, but from mastery, living so confidently, so untouchably, that their hate no longer matters. This isn't about sinking to their level. It's about rising so high that their negativity can't reach you. In this video, we'll uncover 4 powerful ways to hurt those who hate you without lifting a finger. Not through anger, but through presence, clarity, and the kind of strength that speaks for itself. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will forever change the way you deal with hidden enemies. 1. Don't react, rise above. There will be moments in your life when someone tries to provoke you, not through blatant hostility, but with subtle jabs, condescending smiles, and calculated silences. It's never about what they say directly. It's about the energy behind their words, the way they watch for your reaction, like it's a performance they hope to trigger. These people thrive not on confrontation, but on manipulation. They want you to lash out, to break your composure, because the second you react, they've won. They get the satisfaction of knowing they disrupted your peace, and you lose the one thing Stoics guard above all else: your control. But imagine this instead. Their insult lands, and nothing. No flinch, no comeback, not even a shift in your tone. Just unbothered stillness. That's not weakness. That's power. The kind of power that can't be faked, the kind that makes people nervous because they can't reach you. You didn't ignore them out of fear, you simply refused to descend to their level. And that refusal is unsettling. Because now they're left with their own noise, their own chaos, and no audience to feed off. When you stay grounded in the face of disrespect, the dynamic reverses. They lose their grip, and you gain respect not by striking back, but by standing firm. It's not about pretending the pain isn't real. Some words cut deep. Some insults stir old wounds. But strength isn't measured by what you feel, it's measured by what you choose to do with those feelings. When you respond with silence and calm presence, you're not suppressing emotion, you're refining it. You're transmuting that sting into strength, that pause between stimulus and response. That's where your power lives. One of the most powerful things I've ever seen was a man being mocked in front of a crowd. Everyone expected him to snap, but instead, he calmly finished his coffee, looked the offender in the eye, and smiled with such calm certainty that the room went silent. No words, no retaliation, just presence. And in that silence, the one who had mocked him shrank, exposed as petty and insecure. The crowd didn't admire the aggressor, they respected the calm. This is the discipline of the Stoics: to feel the heat, but not be burned by it. To sense the insult, but not let it define you. Your value doesn't come from proving your strength. It comes from embodying it, quietly, unshakably. Remember this: those who bait you are often desperate for your energy. Their chaos requires your reaction to survive. So when you withhold it, you starve the drama. You rob them of the satisfaction they crave. And over time, they stop trying. Not because they've changed, but because you've become unreachable. The Stoics taught that we cannot control how others treat us, but we are always in control of how deeply we allow it to affect us. Mastery doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from mastering yourself and the ability to stay composed when everything around you demands a reaction. That's what separates the strong from the weak, the grounded from the chaotic. So when they try to pull you in, stay still. Let their noise fade. Let their bitterness echo back to them unanswered. Your calm is your answer. Your elevation is your revenge. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to retaliate to win. Because sometimes the most devastating response is none at all. 2. Let calmness break their control. There's a rare kind of strength that doesn't roar, doesn't react, doesn't flinch, it simply remains. And oddly enough, this kind of strength is what disturbs manipulative people the most. Not your anger, not your arguments, but your calm. Because when someone's entire tactic is based on provoking you, your lack of reaction ruins their plan. They expect conflict. They expect chaos. But instead, they're met with composure, and that more than anything breaks their illusion of control. When you remain centered, you send a powerful message. You don't get to determine my emotional state. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to explain. And that unsettles people who are used to controlling others through pressure and performance. Your stillness throws them into confusion because it exposes their aggression for what it is: empty noise. The power they thought they had crumbles in the face of your unshakable presence. Let me ask you this. Have you ever watched someone desperately try to get a rise out of another person, only to fail because that person simply refused to be moved? It's almost painful to watch how quickly the aggressor begins to unravel when their target doesn't take the bait. That's not passivity. That's poise. It's not avoidance. It's elevation. We often think calmness is a passive trait. But in truth, it's one of the most disciplined responses a person can choose. Because calm doesn't mean you're unaffected. It means you've trained yourself to rise above momentary emotions. And in a world that thrives on speed noise and instant reactions, this kind of self-governance becomes revolutionary. Think about a workplace scenario. Someone is gossiping about you, painting you as incompetent, trying to corner you into explaining or defending yourself. The average person might panic, rush to justify, or even retaliate. But when you've embraced the Stoic mindset, your response is deliberate. You assess, you breathe, and you step back. Not because you're weak, but because you know strength is not proved in noise, but in consistency. You double down on your work. You speak through your results. And over time, truth does what it always does: it rises. What's fascinating is how calmness becomes a mirror. It reflects back the restlessness of those trying to shake you. They project chaos. You remain focused. They play games. You play the long strategy. Their weakness is revealed not through your words, but through your refusal to play along. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This is what Stoicism invites us into: a life where calmness is not surrender, but sovereignty. It's not that you don't feel insulted. It's that you've learned which insults are worth your attention and which ones are not. That clarity becomes a boundary. And boundaries, when held with calm conviction, terrify those who want to control you. I remember a time a close friend of mine was publicly accused of things he didn't do. Instead of explaining himself to every critic or reacting online, he did something bold. He said nothing. He just kept showing up. He kept doing the work. And slowly, the accuser's voice grew quieter. Why? Because when there's no reaction, drama becomes a monologue, one nobody wants to listen to. True calm is like a deep ocean. What happens on the surface barely affects the depth. When you operate from that inner stillness, you become untouchable in ways that no defense ever could make you. That's what unnerves those who try to control you. They can't find the edges of your calm. They can't shake what's rooted. And here's the deeper truth. You're not just protecting your peace. You're modeling strength for others who don't yet know they have that option. People watch how you respond. Some are hoping you fall, but others are hoping you stand tall because they need someone to show them how. Your calm becomes an education in dignity. Let them label you distant. Let them mock your restraint. What they don't understand is that calmness is not about being emotionless. It's about owning your emotions so fully that no one else can weaponize them against you. They bring the storm. You become the mountain. And when the wind dies down and the dust settles, you're still standing exactly where you chose to be. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, don't meet them where they are. Don't let their noise break your rhythm. Let them witness something they can't touch: the power of a mind trained to hold its own ground. That silence they hear, that's you winning. That stillness they can't understand. That's what freedom sounds like. Carry that calmness with you, because in the next part of this journey, we'll see how your evolution becomes the greatest discomfort to those who once tried to shake you. 3. Be indifferent to the unworthy. An insult isn't just a word, it's a hook. A calculated attempt to draw you in, to pull you down into someone else's storm. People who lack depth often rely on provocation because it's the only way they know how to feel significant. They don't seek truth, they seek reaction. And every jab, every snide remark, every veiled attack is a signal. Notice me. Fight me. Validate my bitterness with your energy. But you don't have to play along. The Stoics taught that insults only have the power we grant them. Words on their own are weightless until we decide to carry them. When someone throws a spark and you refuse to provide the oxygen, there is no fire. That's the true essence of indifference. Not numbness, not avoidance, but sovereignty. The conscious decision to guard your mind like sacred ground, to reject the notion that anyone else gets to dictate what takes root in your soul. Now picture this. Someone tries to undermine you. Maybe they mock your voice, minimize your efforts, or challenge your worth in subtle ways. Your natural instinct might be to respond, to set the record straight, to defend your character. But imagine if instead of reacting, you saw it for what it really is: noise. A desperate cry for significance dressed up as criticism. You don't bite. You don't flinch. Not because you didn't hear it, but because you've already made peace with who you are. You no longer need to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer chase validation from people whose minds are already made up. That's the strength of Stoic indifference. It's not rooted in ego. It's born from inner resolution. When you've done the work within, when you've addressed your own doubts and shadows, the opinions of the unworthy begin to lose all their weight. There's a quote that says, "Never argue with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you." And Stoicism sharpens that idea even further. You get to choose which voices echo in your life and which ones you silence by simply not engaging. Indifference isn't weakness. It's wisdom in action. I once witnessed a scenario in a corporate meeting. A man was constantly interrupted and belittled by a colleague who clearly felt threatened by him. Most people would have snapped or returned the insult, but not him. He stayed composed, delivered his points calmly, and when the meeting ended, he walked out with his dignity untouched. Everyone saw what happened, and while the aggressor sought to diminish him, it was their own insecurity that ended up on full display. Why? Because silence in the right moment is like a mirror. It reveals more about the attacker than the target. The Stoics remind us that our judgment is ours alone, and that includes the judgment to discern what deserves our attention. Most of the insults we suffer don't linger because they're true, but because they align with a hidden fear we haven't faced. Once we've healed, those same words pass through us like wind. They might hit, but they no longer stay. You begin to see that indifference is a skill, a sharp, focused awareness of where your energy goes. It filters the noise from the signal. It protects your focus like armor. And every time you resist the urge to respond to something beneath you, you are reaffirming that your power lies not in your reaction, but in your restraint. Now let's be clear. Indifference is not silence in the face of injustice. It's not passivity when your principles are under threat. True indifference is about refusing to be emotionally entangled by those who are not acting in good faith. You don't let petty insults rearrange your peace. You don't let baseless criticism dictate your self-worth. You don't defend your soul to someone who can't see its value. When you live this way, you become untouchable, not because no one challenges you, but because you've stopped granting power to every challenge. Your calm becomes unsettling to those who live off chaos. Your clarity exposes their confusion. Your stillness highlights their instability. And the more they push, the more foolish they appear, because you simply will not move. Let them throw stones. You're not within range. Let them twist your words. You don't need to explain. Let them mock your journey. You've already outgrown their destination. The person who cannot be baited cannot be bound. And the one who practices indifference not to prove superiority, but to preserve peace lives in a realm beyond reach. So the next time someone targets you with bitterness, remember this. Your silence doesn't mean they won. It means they're no longer worth the cost of your attention. Their words lose all meaning the moment you decide they don't belong in your inner world. That's when you stop being reactive and start being truly free. Now let's move forward and explore how your transformation itself becomes the loudest message you'll ever send. 4. Win through virtue. There is a kind of power that doesn't rely on force noise or retaliation. It's the strength of living with integrity, a steady, unwavering force that doesn't need to prove itself because it's anchored in virtue. And that kind of strength, it can't be faked, manipulated, or stolen. It's precisely why those who thrive on deception find you so unsettling. They try to provoke, they try to pull you into their games, but when you don't respond the way they expect, it disrupts their entire strategy. When you live according to your principles, it confuses people who are used to seeing others crumble under pressure or chase approval at any cost. They can't understand why you're not reacting, why you're not desperate to defend yourself or retaliate. And that's what makes virtue so powerful. It's not loud, but it's undeniable. It's the quiet force that doesn't back down, even when it would be easier to conform or compromise. Living virtuously doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you've committed to being consistent, especially when consistency is inconvenient. It means holding your ground in the face of adversity, staying honest when lying would be easier, and doing what's right, even when no one is watching. To the Stoics, virtue was the highest goal, not success, not recognition, not comfort, but the unshakable clarity that comes from aligning your actions with your values. Imagine someone is trying to drag your name through the dirt. They distort your words, spread lies, and twist the narrative to make you look like the villain. What they want is your reaction. They want you angry, unbalanced off-center. But instead of reacting, you keep your posture. You don't run from the storm, you move through it with composure. You continue doing the work. You speak kindly, even to those who don't deserve it. And over time, something shifts. The lies begin to sound hollow. The contrast becomes obvious. One person is stirring chaos. The other is building something that lasts. And you win. Not because you fought harder, but because you stood firmer. You win because you didn't trade your character for the illusion of justice. Because your reputation becomes a reflection of your actions, not your defenses. Virtue becomes your shield. It protects you from what retaliation never can. Because while people may attack your name, they can't touch your integrity. That's yours. Always has been. The beauty of this path is that when others realize they can't pull you into their mud, they lose interest. They lose control. They start to see that the very drama they tried to create cannot hold your attention. Why? Because you're busy building something real, a life rooted in principles, not pettiness. Virtue is not weakness. It's not about staying quiet to avoid conflict. It's a deliberate, conscious stance. Sometimes it means walking away from shortcuts others run toward. Sometimes it means making choices that cost you in the short term, but protect your soul in the long run. That's the trade-off. You may lose comfort, but you gain clarity, peace, and a sense of self-respect that no external reward can replace. Think about a time you stood your ground when it would have been easier to bend. Maybe you were pressured to go along with something you didn't believe in. Maybe silence would have protected your image. But you didn't fold. You chose what was right, not what was easy. And even if no one else saw it, you did. That moment lives in your memory as proof that your character isn't for sale. That's not just a win, it's a legacy. And here's what most people don't realize: when you live this way, you dismantle your opponent's greatest weapon, the hope that you'll break, that you'll retaliate, that you'll lose control. But you don't. You rise again and again, and that quiet refusal to descend to their level is what finally defeats them. Because there's no move left to make against someone who refuses to betray themselves. This kind of strength isn't born overnight. It's forged through hard choices. It's built through self-awareness, restraint, and conscious repetition. You'll feel the pull to respond, to snap, to get even. But every time you resist that urge, you don't get weaker, you get sharper. You become unshakable. And the people who once tried to manipulate you start to see that you're not a player in their game. You've already outgrown the board. That's the real prize. The life you build through virtue will outlast every lie, every scheme, every attack. It won't need defending because its foundation will be too solid to fall. Others might chase attention, applause, or quick wins, but what you're building is different. It's grounded, it's lasting, it's real. So let your consistency speak for itself. Let your actions outshine the noise. Let your virtue become the quiet force that dismantles everything built on falsehood. Because in the end, they'll realize you weren't playing to win their game. You were creating a life they could never touch. And when we continue next time, we'll look at how your very evolution without a word becomes the response no enemy is prepared for. In this video, we explored 4 powerful Stoic strategies to hurt those who secretly hate you without saying a word or lifting a finger. You learned how to rise above provocation, how calmness breaks their control, how indifference protects your peace, and how virtue becomes your silent shield. These are not tactics of revenge, but principles of inner power. They are how you protect your energy, your focus, and your soul in a world full of noise. Thank you so much for watching and spending your valuable time with this message. If something in this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Stoic wisdom and practical tools to stay strong in a chaotic world. Your journey toward mastery starts now. See you in the next video.